Hey y'all, so my name's Beth, and you're about to watch a conversation that I had with a great friend of mine, Cameron. Cameron is a middle and high school band teacher, French horn player, and just an awesome person. And Cameron just found out that he's going to be teaching middle school chorus at his next school. He reached out to me and was like, hey, how do I do this? How do you do this? What tips do you have? And the cornerstone of everything that I do in the choral classroom begins with music literacy. But music literacy for me doesn't always begin the same as to talking about quarter notes and eighth notes and whole notes. It really breaks it down to a much simpler thought process. So within this video, you're going to see me explain this to Cameron. Here's talk about the how and why. And this is a big credit to Carol Kruger. I learned so much from her and her workshops and how to break things down, and I utilize a ton of her methods and thinking and how we approach music literacy for students, and then have put a lot of my own spins on it as well. So shout out to Carol, and I hope that you enjoy this look at not just teaching music literacy, but a choral and a band or instrumental person thinking about how we approach this as well, and how they can be much more integrated. I learned stuff in how Cameron thinks about why and how you might teach tonality when you have a group of students that are dealing with transpositions, which is something I've never thought of before, to be quite honest. And it's given me a whole lease on how we can take this to the next level in an integrated approach as well, in a more formal type of setting. So enjoy. Let me know what you think. You can leave a message down below, or if you hate it and you think we're awful, I mean, you can leave us a message, but honestly, just keep that to yourself. Just keep it to yourself, all right? But let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy this as much as we enjoyed talking about it.
This is my dear friend, Cameron Elliott, and we met as roommates.
At the NCMEA clinic in this weird, possibly haunted, actually supposedly haunted,
I believe it.
inn. They've got a lot of ghost stories on it, actually. Like, yeah, things. Just look up Brookstown Inn haunted, Winston-Salem.
I probably won't, because
You'll never stay there again.
Yeah. No, I love staying there, but yeah, I don't do haunted stuff. So every November we have the North Carolina Music Educators Conference, and I feel really fortunate because when I came to North Carolina, I had choir friends, but they all kind of had their own people, and I never had a roommate to stay with. The first year, my second year, I was at a new school, and I was really close with our band teacher, Alex, and Alex was like, you can stay with me, girl, and I got to...
You would.
That's a pretty good,
pretty good
impression, yeah.
Yes.
And so I met one guy, Cameron, that first year, and then the next year I met another Cameron, and he's sitting here with us. But it was really cool because I got to know band people.
Yeah.
I'm all about getting outside of the choir world.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
We get sick of it sometimes. We're around it so often.
Well, and if we're not careful, we do the same things, and we don't allow ourselves to cross over like we could and should.
Yeah.
So this is an example of a crossover.
Hey.
So do you want to tell people a little bit about what your next phase of life is and why we're going to be doing what we're doing today?
Yes. Okay. So, I am your typical bando. I did like choir growing up, and fun fact, I was this close to being a voice major in college, this close, and but opted to go with band because I loved it so much, and taught middle school and high school band for the last 2 years, and have come across this like dream job opportunity in Utah. So going out to teach middle school there at this brand new school, gorgeous campus, great administration, good support, good friends that people already know that are out there teaching that I'm going to be working with. And part of the gig is I'm going to be teaching choir. I'm going to be teaching middle school band, choir, and I think this is a surprise for you. They've thrown guitar on me as well. Because they have like 50 students that signed up saying they were interested in learning guitar. So your boy's going to be learning
I have a contact. I can't do that, but I have someone that I will connect you with.
Awesome. Love
Yes. Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Despite the fact that there's a guitar in the screen right now, I'm working.
It's a problem.
Yeah, actually I am working on learning. I'm like teaching myself from YouTube. But I don't know yet. Actually, as I was teaching myself to play guitar, I discovered that what I'm going to be showing Cameron today actually fits really well into some strumming stuff.
Okay, sweet.
So it works well
I'll keep
together.
that in mind. Anything I can do to like consolidate my like pedagogy.
Yes.
I'm teaching three programs technically. I would love to have like that's part of what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
You know, with you today and with some other resources is pull together this just performing arts pedagogy for this one program. Like this is the way we teach rhythm, music notation at Mountain Creek Middle School. You know, across all of our programs. It's gonna make it so much easier. So much easier.
I'm stoked because I think you're gonna hopefully, and I'm not saying this like to my own horn in the least, but when I started teaching at a middle school 5 years ago, I taught at a middle school before I went to grad school, and the only reason why I was successful in that program is because it was a K-12 school, and the elementary school music teacher was baller. And they were all academically gifted kids, and so they just got things so quick I didn't even realize how quickly. And then when I went to this next middle school, I did not know how to teach. So hopefully this will help push you ahead from where I started when I taught middle school. Alright, so I'm going to jump in. I'm going to just show Cameron kind of what I do at the beginning of every day, and we're going to work together, and I'll explain a little bit why, and we'll fly through a lot of this. But I think the important thing to know too is this first up, I just might spend several days and weeks on some of these things because it takes them so much longer to get it.
Right.
Alright, so put your coffee cup down.
Alright. Using my hands.
What is the first, in your mind, like what is the basis of things that you would start with when teaching? Like what is the first, you're going to be teaching music, what's the first thing that you want to teach them? And if you don't know, that's fine. I mean, it's everyone kind of has their own thing.
To me, I think it's beat and pulse.
Right, percent. That's what I think too.
Yeah.
So I always start with beat like lit because there's always two parts to a beat.
Yeah.
There is the downbeat
Down,
and the down up.
Where
Right.
you're strong and weak.
Exactly, exactly. So we always start moving, and so much of what I'm going to be doing is based off of the work that I've done with Carol Kruger. And so there's a lot of different like walking games and stuff, you know, that you can
those
do.
I love. Like the
Awesome. So I'm not going to bore you with that, but then once you have beat, I will then begin having them echo back first on a neutral syllable. So if you'll just echo me. Bum, bum.
bum bum
Bum, bum.
bum bum
Bum, bum, bum.
bum bum bum
Bum, 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 bum.
bum 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 bum.
So I'll play around with a bunch of different things like that. And you'll notice that I grouped the beats in 2s, and then 3s, and then 4s. And I don't tell them that yet, but I automatically want them to be able to feel the beats. And then, once I take it from a neutral syllable, and bum is Carol's neutral syllable that she always uses, I like it because of the vibration that you get from that. Then I switch to talkity-me. So, ta, ta, ta.
Ta ta ta
Ta, ta.
ta ta
Ta, ta, ta.
ta ta ta.
Right, and then another huge thing, because I'm always wanting to do some, have them practice, do some, we'll do it as a group. And then the next way I scaffold that is when it's teacher group, then I will call up a student that feels really strong. And so I'll have a student do it, and we're just beat echoing in groups. And I'll say, I won't necessarily do like I did with you, where I'll say, oh, we're doing 2, 3, and 4. I'll say, now we're doing 2, we practice 2. Now we're going to do 3, we practice 3. Now we're going to do 4, and then we practice 4. So then once a student can do up against a class like that, and you can see that different students are successful in doing that and in not adding in like bum bum, bum bum, because then you're changing it to 3 beat groupings with a rest on the end. Once I have seen that students can be successful with doing one student to class, then I have them break up in pairs or small groups. And I have them, all right, turn to a partner, and I have them practice doing it within small groups.
Yeah.
And I always do that very quickly, like 30-second increments. And then I say, switch, find another group, 30-second increments. Switch, find another group, 30-second increments. And I found, and I'm sure you found this too, if you give them too long of a time, they don't use their time wisely.
Right.
So eventually I began making their breakout or sectional, and then you're teaching sectionals
Right.
also super quick in that context and able to watch. And it provides for individualized assessment a bit more. So then, once we have broken it down like that, I say, this is the beat, and the beat is always ta, okay? Now, the unique thing about beat is that it can be divided. And depending on where and what they understand about beat division, or what a division
Right.
means, you can break that down into smaller sections. I found that a lot of kids struggle with understanding what division is.
Yeah.
So, I actually hadn't planned to talk about this, but I actually found this on Pinterest years ago. But talking that a beat, I have taken noodles. I haven't finished these yet, but like, if this represents a beat can be divided into two. And showing them a physical representation of it, and then just pretend that this can also be, like I cut this, and it can be divided equally into three.
Yeah.
So then I have them practice beat and beat division. We're going to start with beat division of 2. So we're patching again. Bum 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 bum.
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 Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Okay, good. Cameron, you come to the class, and now you do it.
Thanks. Bum 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 bum.
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 Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum. And you get the picture. Okay. So then we practice it like that. I go through the same thing. One kid comes down, and then they go back up, and then I do small group breakouts. And honestly, that can take a period or two.
Yeah.
Just within that. And then I talk about, so beat can be divided into 2, and beat can also be divided into 3. So let's practice that. Bum bum bum. Sorry, and then bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Bum 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 bum.
Good. And yay. Now, how many beats are we grouping together? Exactly. And so I sometimes get so excited to do that switching, I forget to always introduce beat division in 2s and 3s by also grouping it. And
would you teach 16 notes before you would teach triplet?
I don't teach notes. I don't even
You're just
talk.
teaching that division.
I just talk about beat
What
and
I
beat
love
division.
About this, and like bandos like me, you know, we're used to seeing like, oh, like middle school kids, they won't learn an 8-note triplet until they're at least in like, you know, their 2nd or 3rd year of playing. And
But they
you
just
teach
learn
them
it.
this, and they're learning, they're learning it in their first like week,
Yeah.
and it makes it so much easier
Yeah.
to transfer scaffolding people,
Mhm.
like using prior
Totally.
knowledge. Let's do it. It's so. I mean, well, there's so much of that stuff. They're singing it in pop music without really realizing it.
It's in their ear.
You know, someone who uses this kind of stuff, like Katy Perry, has so much of these like complex syncopation, you know, triplet stuff, and you know, singing along with it. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's there, but we just get so bogged down in the notation of it, and we do a bad job of teaching notation as well. So that's the biggest thing, and I'm gonna write. So
You teach it like something that they don't know instead of teaching it like something that they know and they're just rediscovering.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and then they're able to label it.
Yeah.
Right. So you're first teaching beat, and then you're teaching beat division, and the beat can be divided into 2 and 3. Now here's the great thing too, is that if you can teach beat and beat division in 2 and 3, you're not only teaching simple and compound meter, you're also teaching mixed meter.
Yeah.
Easily. So once you've begun, then I always teach it first neutral. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Neutral. And then we begin to label the neutral. So also there's echoing going back and forth within the neutral. And so now let's label. We always know that the beat is what?
Top.
The beat's top. So then if the beat is divided into 2, it's labeled ta-di. And if the beat is divided into 3, it is taki-do. Now, just wait as to why it will again blow your mind. So let's practice just some labeling real quick. Ta-ta-di, ta-ta-di.
Ta-ta-di, ta-ta-di.
Ta-di, ta-ta-di-ta.
Ta-di, ta-ta-di-ta.
Ta-di, ta-di-ta-ta.
Ta-di, ta-di-ta-ta.
And then we can go back and forth. And again, I am in a bad way of saying it when I should be singing it. You were singing it earlier, which I love. And you can explore different registers with it as well. Taki-do, taki-do, ta. Taki-do, taki-do, ta, ta.
Taki-do, taki-do, ta-ta.
Taki-do, ta, taki-do, ta.
Taki-do, ta, taki-do, ta.
And again, I'm saying in groups of 4, but echoing back and forth. And I forgot to show the beat division when we switched to 3.
I like that.
Mhm.
That helps because going from here, taki-do, taki, like,
Yeah.
that's going to confuse them.
Totally.
So don't miss that step.
Yeah,
because
don't do
can-
that. I totally missed that. I got excited. I haven't been doing this for 2 weeks and I've already forgotten. Yeah, so make sure that you're showing the beat division. Taki-do, taki-do, taki. And that way, and then they can feel it and see it. But what was interesting is you made that connection as a teacher to be able to teach the triplets.
Yeah.
Within that. So then once I begin labeling, and I'm doing this all the first day, and I'm flying through how and why I would do this for time's sake, but then I would say, well, let's combine it. Taki-do, ta-di, taki-do, ta-di.
Taki-do, ta-di,
Your
taki-do, ta-di. Taki-do, taki-do, ta-di, taki-do.
Taki-do, taki-do, ta-di, taki-do.
Taki-do, ta-di, taki-do, ta-di.
Taki-do, ta-di, taki-do, ta-di.
Taki-do, ta-di, ta-di, taki-do, ta-di, ta-di.
Taki-do, ta-di, ta-di, taki-do, ta-di, ta-di.
How many of you can get 7, 8 out of your kids on like the first try?
Right? But I swear to you, teaching it this way,
Right? Ah, bless you.
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yes. It's here for it.
So the biggest thing though is doing this a lot slower than what I just did.
Sure.
And to always be practicing, and I have not done a good job of doing this today, but always practicing, like, you want to be intentional with your beat groupings, right? So you're always grouping your beats in 2s, 3s, and 4s. And the sooner that you can begin to label that too, like, we're going to do beat groupings of 2.
Yeah.
That, I've missed that step. I haven't been as good about that step in the past. And then it comes back to haunt me when I'm teaching time signatures. Right? So if I can already begin to have them think about beat groupings, when you begin to talk about time signatures, they're already thinking about beat groupings. They already know beat groupings.
When you're talking about beat groupings, you're talking about like if we're doing, our hand symbols, how many times their hand is hitting top.
Correct.
So 2 would be like any sort of duple.
Mm-hmm.
3 is any sort of triple meal. You say like 3, 4, 3.
Right.
Or 3, 4, 6, 4, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Because even when you go to compound meters, if you know how many big beats are there, then you can count the beat divisions,
Right.
which then gives you that top number.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So this, once you begin this like process of first in the mouth, having them repeated, again, I cannot stress the importance of having them do it in front of the class first, one kid at a time, and being like, yes, you're messing up, that's awesome. Right.
Trying.
Right. You want them messing up. I cheer anytime a kid messes up because we don't celebrate screw-ups enough. And Carol Kruger is a big proponent of not using a metronome, of being able to feel the beat. I do use a metronome a lot because it keeps me honest, because I'll speed up. And we were even speeding up when we were doing this.
I think conglomerate of like the both.
Yeah.
You know, doing that, keeping the metronome so they can hear it. And,
Right.
you know, sound intelligences, you know, your teacher nerds will like those things. You need to address your auditory learners as much as you address anything else. But it gives them something to anchor to, so they're feeling it and they're hearing it. I mean, like, it has many senses as you can involve. Like, do it.
Exactly. And I actually use an old-timey metronome. Like I have
I'm gonna have one of those big old loud Dr. Beats.
Oh gosh, those are
because I'm a band.
right. I know. I love to use this old, like the pendulum, because they love the pendulum, and then they get to see how it affects in time. This is my great grandfather's, and I think it's cool to be able to play it and watch it. Okay, so this is this like throwing you into Takadimi and teaching how you hear it. And we're going to get to pitch in just a second, but I want to show you how I introduce notation as well. I introduce notation through dictation. And I haven't totally decided, this past year was one of the first years that I really was purposeful in introducing notation this way. And I think it's helped, but again, I've only had 1 year of totally doing it this way. So here's this. So we begin to talk about beat and beat groupings and beat and beat division. So in order for them to be able to fully understand beat and beat division, they have to understand those two concepts before you can hear. So I then label, if we're going tas and toddies versus tas and taki-doos, I already begin to label simple and compound and throw those in. So, okay, if we're doing this, what meter am I in?
Simple.
And if I'm doing this, I'm in?
Compound.
Right. And then if I do this?
Mixed.
Precisely. So, and they can do that without ever having to look at it. I'm going to actually try something new here. So now we're going to practice dictation, which is writing what you hear. And we're going to do beat groupings of 2 in compound. So here's how you set up your paper. In compound meter, our big thing is counting beat divisions, right? So I'm going to draw 1 tall line and 2 short lines. And this is showing my beat division here. Okay. Now all of this is 1 beat.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do, because beats are always divided into 2. So if I were to just read this on Takadimi, I would read taki-do, taki-do,
Gotcha.
just like that. And so we just practice reading it, and I really encourage tracing. Yeah. Taki-do, taki-do.
Taki-do, taki-do.
Very good. And then we have, so this is showing beat division. And then the other thing that we've learned is beat.
Yeah.
So what does beat look like when we write that? Well, beat is just tying together all of your beat divisions. And I'm particular in using the word tie.
Right. Musical concept.
And I'm particular in talking and tying together each individual beat division.
Okay. With the tie.
So then this would be ta ta.
Gotcha.
And then you
Ta ta.
precisely. And then you can mix it up, right? So and then we practice.
So you can say, okay, if I erase this line that's not tied together, it'd be ta ta ta.
Well,
Okay.
before we do that,
I'm
I
sorry,
haven't
I'm
even taught
sorry.
that yet though. Yeah, I haven't even taught what that would be. So we're just going to be practicing on this ta and taki-do.
Okay, so you're gonna go back and forth between like one
Beat and beat
tie.
division.
Okay, I see.
But the reason why, and this is where I do something, the reason why I do it this way versus doing this, because this is how it's sometimes been taught, and I used to teach it this way, they would get confused.
So like, well, what do I do with that one?
Right, why that doesn't tie. And honestly, this now looks less like a tie and more like a slur,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is different. So because then when we get into doing
Right.
this and
Yeah.
this, it makes more
What's interesting,
sense.
so like a lot of band method books,
Yeah.
when they teach ties in middle school, they'll often, or like half notes, or, well, ties actually, so they'll usually do like a measure of, because for some reason they teach the half note before they teach the tie, generally just because it's one less step to worry about. So they'll give you like 2 quarter notes, a half note, and then they'll do the 2 quarter notes again. I'm running out of space here, I did not plan this wisely. And then they'll give you these 2, and you kind of have to play like detective and be like, all right, class, like, we know the tie points to these together. How am I going to play that? Oh, that sounds like what? And they go, oh, that half note.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's a pretty similar concept, but this, for them, takes so much extra thought than this, because for some reason they see that note head,
Mhm.
and the way it's been taught, it just doesn't, it's not as natural.
Oh, don't even get me started on how we
'Cause
teach
now,
note heads,
now
yeah?
you're dealing with like, closed versus open note heads, you're dealing with potential pitch, you're dealing with bar lines.
You're
which
dealing
we're
with
not even,
stem direction, too.
right, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't even,
But I like the parallel though between this, because if I can get them thinking this, then it'll be much easier on down the road when, a line like this comes up in the method book, and I'm like, hey, remember this? Let's chart this out.
well, and they can notate the beat division
Yeah.
in their score.
Yeah.
Right, and I love this because a lot of conductors, particularly if they're in a mixed meter, they'll write line circle, or I always do triangle.
I do triangle, yeah.
Well, what does this make? A triangle.
Yeah. I like that.
Which, yeah, it's saved me as a musician in being able to do this as well. So again, we can go back, and I always say, set up your paper. How many, and I go, what's the first question? So then, whenever we do dictation, and I go, set up your paper, the first question is, what's your meter? And your meter, and I haven't done a ton of mixed, because there's so much you can do with
Right.
simple and compound. So what's your meter? And then 2, what are your beat groupings? And you're teaching time signatures, but you're teaching like it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, if the biggest thing is compound is always that. And then what's different, and this is why I'm very particular in how I teach it this way, in simple, you just have one line that represents the beat.
Gotcha.
Okay? So if I'm going to do something in simple, and I usually have them write it. You're doing something in simple meter, then what are your beat groupings? Pick 2, 3, or 4.
3.
Okay, so we're doing simple 3 beat groupings. And then the next question is, how many measures?
Gotcha.
But sometimes I just do like one set and one set at a time.
Right.
But let's say we're doing 2 measures. So I go, all right, 1, 2, 3. Oh, so after you have a set of beats, then you draw a bar line. A what? A bar line. Make sure you're labeling your bar line, and there you're teaching bar line automatically. And then it separates this. And we're doing 2 measures, and then once I finish, what do I do?
Another bar line.
Nope, double bar line, because it's the end of the piece.
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Failed music school.
No, but no one is like intentional in
Right,
how they're teaching
right.
this to us, but
That's
yet
true.
it's so, like, and then they haven't looked at any notation, but they've learned so much.
Love it.
Um,
Of course, you're gonna have that one kid that just does.
exactly.
I get it. There's my double bar line. You're like, no, it looks the same.
Right.
Make sure you like emphasize this.
Yeah, the length, the length of it definitely matters. So then, what's different? It's yeah. Yeah. So then the next thing is, this is where it can get a little bit confusing, so you just want to make sure that you're very intentional, and this is why I introduced this strictly with beat and beat division, is that in compound meter, you are drawing the beat division, so for beat, you're adding something like this. In simple meter, you're drawing the beat, so you are adding a dividing line to show beat division.
Gotcha.
Right? So this would be bum 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 bum, or in Takadimi, ta-dee ta ta ta-dee ta ta.
Gotcha.
That's one of the biggest struggles at times, but if you were super intentional in teaching this way, they get a lot better with it.
Part of me is, here's what I like, here's what I'm
Yeah.
like worried about. And
Yeah.
tell me what your experience is with this, because I could just,
No,
it may not be an
please.
issue. So I'm like, I know I'm gonna get that kid that's like, why don't we just do this for this? And throw like a little line in between.
The biggest reason why is when we go to translate this, it makes a bit more sense.
Okay.
Typically. And it automatically shows you how it looks differently. And I teach it as in simple meter, you are showing the down and the up with it. Like, it's easier to divide it into two this way than to divide it into, you can't divide this equal, because it will just, this is not dividing it into three in a sense. We actually call this Takadimi.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was about to be my next question, is like, is that what, because my brain initially wanted to go there, and I was like, well, no, I bet that's what,
Right.
because you get similar markings like that in percussion parts.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar when you get to like rolls or
Right,
things like that. You'll
right.
get those slashes
Right.
written in as subdivisions, and it behaves the same way. Where like the 2 lines is like another division,
Precisely.
and so like, but it's the same division.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so here's the other thing too, if we're talking time signature, and I always discuss meter is different than time signature, right? Meter is the words, time signature is the numbers. Another thing, that as soon as I begin, we're doing beat groupings, yes? Beat groupings of what? 2. Here's the fancy word for 2, duple. Okay, so what are we in? Duple, and I begin to I interchange 2 and duple automatically. So the other thing is, if we're talking time signatures here, and 3/8 has always confused me and pissed me off in theory books. I was like, how is 3/8 a simple meter?
Right.
How is 3/8 a simple meter? But this is 3/8, and all of your beat groupings are like usually in 2, and so you can't have this. This is only one beat grouping, so therefore it has to be simple because you have the 3 individual beats. Beats are always grouped in 2, 3s, or 4. So when I go to switch this to meter, how many beats are there? 2. But in our time signature, so it's duple compound. So now let's switch it to a time signature. If we go and switch it to a time signature, in compound meter, the top number counts the beat divisions. So let's count our beat divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
So it could be 6/8, or it could be 6/4, or it could be something like that. But that's another thing you can say, well, we just do it this way now, and I'll teach you why when we get to time signatures,
Right.
as to why we do it this way versus 1, 2. Because then they're going to be tempted to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and we don't count time signatures that way.
Right.
We count the beats.
Right.
So this being 3, 2.
Gotcha. Sweet.
Cool. All right, so then let's quickly jump to, so we always say the meter, we always say the beat groupings, and then we always say the number of measures. So anytime you're doing dictation, this is what you're doing. Let's jump to notation, and then we'll jump to pitch.
Yep.
Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, so when I'm talking about notation, and this is a Carol Kruger thing I learned in my mind, was like, "Patois." Would you just write your name for me? Right, thanks. You wrote your name on the line for me, right? Good. Will you put a note head on the line for me? No, that's in a space. Right, exactly.
What? Continue. Tell me more.
Yeah. But this, like, when I learned this at Carol sang, I was like, I wanted to cry, and she'll talk about this too. Like, you want to run back to all of your former students and be like, I'm so sorry!
Right!
I failed you.
I failed you.
Right. But they mean two separate things.
Yeah.
So even before I actually bring in lines, I first talk about note heads. Because no one ever specifically teaches us note heads, right? But what is a note head?
It is. Oh, you're actually asking.
Yeah.
Like rhetorical. If I were to explain that, I'd just say it's. Frick. I can't.
Exactly! Exactly! Sorry, I'm really throwing you under the bus
no,
here.
you're fine. No, but you know, it makes sense, and you know, if you go to Q, like, oh, what's a note head? A little circle that tells me, you know, what kind of
No one
note
has
it
taught us
is.
how to break it down so simple.
Yeah.
So a note head is one of two things.
Yeah.
It's an unfilled oval. I say oval because I feel like an
Right.
oval is more representative than a
Right.
circle. So an unfilled oval or a filled-in oval. Yes, that's a note head. A note head can function in two different forms. Yeah. And a note head indicates pitch. Right? And that's how I first introduce it, even though it can introduce rhythm. I don't necessarily get to talking about that yet. So the note head indicates pitch. If the note head goes up, the pitch goes. If the note head goes down, the pitch goes.
Down.
Right. And if the note head doesn't change, it is
The note
the same.
doesn't change.
Right. So a note head can be placed different in music, which we just learned. I'm going to use open note heads on a line, on top of a line, or like this. And I got really frustrated when I would ask kids to start writing music, and they would give me, and let's just say I have like 3 lines, and they would give me this, or like this. So I was like, crap, I've got to do a better job of teaching what I expect. So a note head covers the distance from one line to the next, about the same, and I make sure it doesn't touch. The center of the note head goes through. If it's on a line, it goes through a line. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I actually have them practice, depending on the level of learners that you have, I actually have them practice identifying notes as on a line or a space, and I have them then practice writing notes on a line or a space. And so that's even the first thing. It's like recognizing, is it a line or a space note?
Yeah.
And then the second component being what line or what space is it on? So is it on one L or one space? And I first see if they can recognize it, and then I see if they can write it. Because that will help me understand, like, there's no way they'll be able to play a melody if
Right.
they're misidentifying the place on the staff.
Right.
So then I practice, and this will be really big for your singers, and I have some flashcards for you to take home, of some stuff,
Flashcard.
but it's then practicing. You're going to start, I'm going to jump into pitch really quickly, and I love D major. My piano's out of tune. I practice just using 5 notes first, but I usually start with do, mi, and so. Do, do, do,
Do do do.
do, do, mi,
Do do mi.
do, mi, so,
Do mi so.
so, mi, so,
So mi so.
so. You have a great voice. You should have been a voice major. So, mi, do.
So mi do.
And this, so exactly how I introduce rhythm is exactly how I introduce pitch. And I've gone back and forth from teaching do, re, mi and do, mi, and so. I like do, mi, and so because I feel like the spaces are easier for people to jump
Yeah.
to. And honestly, the hand signs are easier. And I don't know how comfortable you feel with hand signs.
Between Ray and me, they
Mhm.
they look the same.
Exactly. So if and it's easier to fill in the spaces than to build up, I think.
Yeah. Just making like more like
Yeah.
band.
Oh,
band
please.
connections here. So love the D major because it's actually a really like fairly comfortable. Like D is a good starting pitch for a lot of band
That's awesome.
instruments. So like if they can get that pitch in their head, concert D, and then filling down to
Yeah.
concert, or filling like concert F and then like up and down from there. It's actually like it's so nice. So
That's
like
awesome.
teaching that pitch, band people, it's really comfortable for
And
band
have them sing
instruments.
it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of band teachers.
Because you teach D down to B flat, and they teach D up to F, and then they've got their first 5 notes. And it's comfortable registers for all of your beginning instruments. So even as a band person, if I were to take do, re, mi, you know, or something, and just really like hammer home like re and mi, and I'd be like, you like overemphasize that angle or something, or like get the arm involved, like.
Well,
like
be
do,
careful because you have do, D, re, re.
Oh, that's right.
Mi. I know. You can
but
have
yeah.
your kids singing chromatic scales
Oh yeah.
by the first year. Now we're going to address a point of contention.
Controversy. Let's do it.
Law-based minor.
Law-based minor. Okay, tell me.
Okay, so
So, like fixed note. But
no,
around-
so basically it just, once you get going, like, do, mi, do, again, going through, having one kid come down, have them sing it to the class, then you're able to hear, and
Sure.
I also model, like, oh, that was wrong, let's try it again, and cheering when they mess up, then they go around in sections, so this is another key component, so you're having them echo first, just like we did, person to person, then you're going to want to start improvising.
Okay, yeah.
So you're only using pitches do, mi, and so, and you have this is huge. Start with the pitch that I left off on. So sing me a little pattern. I mean, it doesn't have to be big.
Do, so, do.
Do, mi, do.
Do, mi, so. No, that was not do, mi, so. No, that was right.
No, you sing do, re, but it's fine. Yeah. So, so, so.
So, mi, do.
Do, so, mi, so.
So, mi, so, mi.
Mi, do, so.
So, mi, do, mi.
Mi, do, mi, mi.
Mi, do, so.
And you'll find that they really struggle with me. So if you hear that they're leaving off on me and struggling coming back in on me, then I would say make sure your pattern always ends on do.
Gotcha.
If it's too tricky for them to start anywhere. But when you enable them to improvise by leaving off on the last pitch, that is like giving them a foundation. Well, they're listening to the phrase that the person is singing, and they're not too busy worrying about what am I going to sing next, And for your kids that really struggle to stay in a tonal center, it helps them too.
Right. Band people.
Yeah.
Talking to us.
Yeah.
For a minute. One thing I like about this too is, so one thing I've always done as part of my warm-ups, like later on in the year,
Yeah.
when I'm teaching scales, I teach my middle schoolers hand signs for solfege. And so when you're teaching scales and you want your students to, I took this from a colleague that I worked with at my first teaching gig, because she did this with her band, Stephanie Tomlin, she's fantastic. And when you're teaching scales and you want them to really get comfortable with playing in a key, and you know, be able to, you go through a scale, but you stand in front of the class and you just show whatever hand signs, and they're reading your hand signs and they're going on the dot. So you do this and they're playing do, and then you move your hand and they're thinking, okay, what is the 5th note of that scale? And they're playing it back to you, and so you're in real time, you're showing them, you're not even singing, you're just showing the hand signs, and they're finding those pitches, and they're thinking scale degrees and that kind of stuff, and they're thinking solfege and those kind of things. But one thing I like about this is, you know, band directors, arpeggios, we're all big on those, and arpeggios are the hardest things in the world to teach middle schoolers about scales. For some reason they get scales and they're like, well, what's my arpeggio?
Right.
It takes so long to teach it to them. And I think so many of us are scared to teach the intervals early on, because they say, well, the students' embouchures aren't developed enough to, because a jump from, you know, on a trumpet C to G, that's a relatively hefty embouchure change that a woodwind may not have to worry about as much, but your brass players really have to worry about, because they've never had to move their mouth like that, they've never had to use their corners or muscles. But it's not as big of a change as you would think, and if you can get them realizing, because I mean, people that teach like beginning brass, like lip slurs are one of the first things you do. You teach them sirens. But like like on the mouthpiece, of course,
Yeah.
instead of like free buzzing. And so if you can get them to get used to like using those corners early on with playing and making these connections on their instruments, getting in their ear with singing first. Always, band people, get your students singing. If your
Yes,
band
yes.
kids don't sing, they're not going to develop their inner ear. Like, teach, if you can sing it, you can play it. Like, please, because inner ear matters so much to the sound that comes out of an instrument, even though it's not coming from your vocal cords. You know, it does involve so much of your air and like similar things that it becomes more muscle memory the more they can like audiate it inside themselves. But if I can get like a brass player doing do mi so on a trumpet, C E G, or I guess D major, E G B. B can be a little bit high
Okay.
for them, so I might choose a different key just
Yeah.
for this exercise.
Well, even just
or
staying
even just
in
doing
do mi and
do
so.
and mi, or honestly just do and mi would be probably
Yeah.
the first things. Or
Well, again,
actually, I would probably do this in do and mi and D, or I might teach it as mi so on
which is your minor?
B flat. It's still that same range, but then in band I would be working D up to F and then D down to B flat. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
It does. But the reason
Band
being,
keys are weird.
they're weird.
They're
As,
weird.
as long as you're going up to A, oh, yeah, but if
Yeah.
you're just going up to A and stay, the reason why I also
Sorry,
start on
I'm thinking
this.
trumpet pitches. That's why I said E.
Oh, okay.
I'm on trumpet mode.
That
Sorry.
makes sense.
Transposing.
Yep.
D to A. So like on a trumpet, they'll see E G B.
Yeah.
That some of those can be a little bit of a
Tricky.
jump for them.
Okay.
Sometimes, not always.
Yeah.
But I think the more moral of the story, I've kind of rambled here.
No, it makes
is
total sense
if
though.
you can get those embouchures moving,
Right.
then filling in the steps in between steps becomes so much easier.
Right.
And then you're developing that musculature early on.
Right.
And just be very band people just be very like adamant and watch your brass players closely so they're not developing bad habits by jumping too quick. So but if you're slow and deliberate about it and you're teaching those lip slurs, because that
Yeah.
jump of a fifth, that's just like one harmonic series roughly on a trumpet. So like you get them to start doing this in different keys. Maybe you can still jump outside of D major or whatever.
Yeah.
If you teach like instrument only classes, like if you have just a trumpet class or just a
Oh,
brass
sure.
class, and like trumpet is going from like C to like G, like that's your first harmonic series on trumpet without putting any vowels down. They're just going C to G.
Oh, sure.
So they're not even putting any vowels down there. So you're only adding in,
Right.
if they play C, E, G, there's your arpeggio,
And you're
there's
only
your
in
do, mi,
one.
so, you're only adding one vowel combination in there for now. And it's so nice for them.
In 2 years, our theory series on how to teach all of this
Yes.
for band and chorus will be out. But I'm so glad you
Yeah.
shared that because I would have never thought about the embouchure and then also the harmonic series on instruments in regards to teaching
This
this.
is why I've been so excited to do this, because I'm like, I love this, and like
Yeah.
everything, I'm taking so much, just like, oh, I never thought about teaching dictation to my like beginner band kids, but
Right.
if I can get them to do that, it'll be so much easier to say, if you were to write this down, if this was the dictation you just wrote down after I played, what would that sound like? You know, what do you think that would sound
Yeah.
like? Can you show me that?
Right.
You know, and that kind of thing. And then hopefully, building those bridges in their mind by working backwards a little bit, taking what they know, working back to it,
Yeah.
and you're strengthening those connections.
Absolutely. Well, and two, it provides, so many times, like, we don't write in music, we just read the but it helps us when we can write, and it also provides tangible evidence for you to go and say, look, this is not right.
And you've got your kids improvising
Or
too
it's
early on with all this stuff. National standards.
Yes.
Those of you that don't know, NAFME has put out national standards. They're like unofficially official because like there is no like national governing body
Sure.
of music like there is or
But
national
I was never
curriculum.
taught to improvise.
Right. Or band kids. How many of you have a jazz band in middle school, and those of you that try to teach them how to improvise, and the kids freeze up, and they're like,
How many professional musicians do we know that when we say improvise, they freeze up?
right?
Ding, ding, ding.
Get them not scared of it now.
Yeah.
It makes them a better musician. It makes
Right.
them more,
And the cool thing is it makes us better musicians, right?
Yeah.
Because so many times when we think about this, we're like, ah, but if you are teaching them the basics of how to improvise, you're teaching yourself the basics of, and
Right.
I'm a much better improviser now doing all this than I was 5
Right.
years ago. Okay, so here, I'm going to jump to minor real quick,
Go
and this
for
is
it.
what I talk about in regards to, I wish I
Law-based
had my,
minor.
yeah. So if I'm teaching, do, mi, sol, mi, do, and we feel comfortable in that, the same day, don't wait, then you're going to do, ti, la, do, mi, do, la,
La do mi do la
la, la,
la
la, do, mi,
la do mi
mi, do, mi, do,
mi do mi do
mi, do, la.
mi do la.
And that same day, you've only added one new thing, la.
You teach minor. Okay, so yes. So remember when I said fixed do earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's.
So
yeah.
technically, fixed do means C. In the choral world, when we talk about fixed do,
Fixed do kind of is that.
yeah, and then yeah, so that's why I said
see,
no.
I see what you're saying. Okay, got it.
Yeah, we call it law-based minor versus do-based
Fair.
minor,
I gotcha.
right? And
Gotcha.
and that was the only so the guy I said how who introduced us and how we know each other, Alex. That is literally the only thing we've ever thought about is
Law-based minor versus do-based minor.
correct.
You know, but. And this would be fun. I know you have people like comment on your
Yeah.
podcast, things like that. You know, how do you teach minors? Do you teach your relative minors first, or do you teach your parallel minors?
I teach
first?
relative minor.
Right.
Right.
And I teach relative minor
Mm-hmm.
because, or I like to teach relative minor
Yeah.
because you're not changing the key signature. You're keeping the pitch center the same.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of times how I'll do it. I'm like, hey guys, play a C major scale for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually work, and then I'm like, okay, we're doing A minor today. I'm like, now go down to your A,
Mm-hmm.
and then just play a C major scale
Yeah.
to start on A and end on
Right.
A.
And this is honestly where I love what your band teacher friend was saying, that then they can stay within that whole thing and you can modulate their understanding of the tonality by just changing the pitch, right? If you're having them
Yeah.
play this, then all you're doing is, or this, then you're just adding this one and they're staying within that as
Yeah.
well. And then eventually I do teach parallel minor, and this is my phrase that I always use, same pitch, different function.
Yeah.
Same pitch, different function. So, la, do, do. All right, now I'm going to change do and change it to la. Do, la, ti, do, re, mi, re, do, ti, la. And same pitch, different function. So I teach that a lot later
So now you're
on.
teaching modes.
Right.
Oh, how easy it would be to just, skip through the flowers of modes.
Right.
With
Yeah.
this.
Absolutely. So, and then, so I teach major and minor same day.
Granger have a lot of modes. Who else had it? There's a few
Band people, is this one?
band people, sorry, that use a lot of modes in their music, and like I'm gonna be teaching middle school, so like I'll rarely get to a lot of Granger. But like people with high school students, you want to be able to teach, some modes,
Right.
Mixolydian, Phrygian, there's a lot of stuff in that like British folk song tradition that exists.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Ralph Vaughan Williams.
Yeah.
And a lot of, modal stuff. That's
Huge.
such an easy way to do it.
Huge, huge, huge.
Yeah.
But it really comes down from, again, teaching do to so, do, mi, and so, and then you can begin to fill in re and fa. And honestly then, once you've taught do, mi, so, la, do, mi, and you add in re and fa, the only other pitch that you have to teach the whole scale is T.
Yeah.
But so many times I and so many others get caught up in teaching the scale of do to do.
Right.
And that's also not how we function completely
Right.
too. So if you break it down in these smaller steps, do, mi, so, la, do, mi, do, re, mi. Oh, so this is the order. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a little bit out of order from, again, more band connections here. Another thing a lot of method books and a lot of people like to do is like 3-note songs, 5-note songs kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great for teaching the first 5 notes. It's easy register for your kids. But, so for those of you that are freaking out watching this, like, well, how am I going to teach them, you know, Mary Had a Little Lamb or
Right.
Hot Cross Buns?
Doesn't matter. They don't sing it
Like,
in
if we're going to, like, well, band kids play it, they put those.
Well,
like,
that's what I mean. When we sing it.
But, like, they're going to just hear this out and follow through this. And then when you're filling in, you know, practice do, re, mi, and just the concept, you know, just those 3 notes, and then teach your 3-note songs. Do mi, fa, sol, teach those 3-note songs, and then do your 5-note songs when you're putting it all together. So, like, just, like, hold off just a bit
Yeah.
on that kind of stuff. Teach this stuff in advance, and then that stuff will be so much easier when it comes time. And then, you know, you're teaching those as a band person more for the concept of fingering issues. And because, I mean, like, think of a flute player and how many things, you know, how many, and clarinets. I'm a brass player, I had it easy,
Yeah.
you know. And,
French horn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I started out on trumpet.
Which
Both
makes
still only
sense.
have 3 valves, and I'm
Right.
a lefty, so, like, you know,
Yeah.
French horn made sense. But, you know, even still, like, coordination on a brass instrument still matters. But a flute player, they've got, you know, all of their fingers to worry about. Clarinet, same thing. So
Well,
teaching 3-note and 5-note songs are necessary, and teaching them slowly and getting used to just for those reasons. But having like an understanding of how solfege works and how to get their ear functioning means that when you get to these things, guys, all you're having to teach is fingerings.
So here's my question though, what if you taught those songs but had them figure out how to play it on their instrument? Right, without even giving them notation, because they've understood this.
So here's that thing too.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And this is point of contention in band music is rote teaching.
Right.
It's big in the band world with a lot of people that are like, oh, I would never.
Right.
Because, you know, they feel like they're having to go back and reteach. And to a degree you are, but like everything we do as teachers, you're having to reteach. And hello, spiral curriculum, guys, you know,
Right.
for the education nerds out there. You always have to circle around and then keep going up and scaffolding and building things on top of it. So like, I love doing that kind of stuff, the echo and stuff. And then you can throw in this, you know, the takadimi, the hand pulsing, and I can go, you know, if I'm in class and go do mi do, and then they can play it back to me da da da, because I'll be like, all right, instruments, this is that note da da.
Well,
here's your fingering. Here's this note. Now, you know, now that you know these 2 notes, can you echo what I'm giving back to you?
And here's what you can add on to negate, or to fuss back at someone that says, oh, it's rote teaching. Well, that is rote teaching to an extent, but then the add-on, the next level of the scaffold, to say, can you write it down?
Yeah.
Do, mi, do. Well, I could write that down because you've taught me how to do this, you've taught me how to do all of this. And I think so many times we're so scared of rote teaching because of what we think it means, but then what if they can play something back and then they can write it down?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we want?
And of course, yes, that's exactly what we want. Now, with band people, and I know someone's going to say this because it's going through my head,
Yeah.
and don't freak out, just add this extra step in, is you're going to want to teach instrument transposition along with this. Because if I teach all of my kids to do this on just, like, let's say C, G for do, mi, do, well, and then I get them to write it down, well, then a clarinet's going to be used to hearing this, but they're actually supposed to write it on a different pitch. So, you know, take the extra time, work with your, you know, people say, now trumpet's for you, this is C.
Right, that's Beth. That's something I hadn't thought about.
It's fine, because again, this is why we're doing this. This is why the choir and band people fight all the time, because we're like, you don't know what I do. And like, vocal majors over here like, I'm on a vocal rest, I can't argue with you right now.
And they can't read the music. Yeah.
And so
then you could, even before you have them put it in notation, have them write down the solfege syllable.
Right. And so that's what I would like. I think that's what I like is can you give me a solfege syllable? Can you, like, you know, show me on I would have like a fingering chart or something with, like, you know, just a pencil. Can you shade in the finger the fingering chart for me for the 2 notes you just heard?
Yeah.
And then erase it and let's do another one or something like that. You know, or that kind of thing. Teach them how to, like, shorthand their fingerings and, like, the fingering chart. Give them a whiteboard and be like, all right, can you, like, draw the 2 fingerings you just heard me sing, like, play it and then hold it up. Or like check with your neighbor.
Don't get it. No.
And
This
like-
is what you do. You print out their instrument on a white sheet of paper, and you put it in a sheet protector, and you give them one
and
of
then
these.
Sharpie, they can do it
and
with a sheet protector.
Mhm.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And you can do that with stabs and
Yeah.
different things like that
Yeah.
too.
That'd be great. That'd be
So
such-
I want to correct something I scaffolded and like a little poorly before. I said going I don't remember what I said, but I would go do mi sol, and then la do mi, and then I would add in do re mi. Yeah, did I do that right? You know what I meant though. And then I would do la ti do, and then the only one you're actually missing is fa. So fa is the last one that you're adding
Gotcha.
in. And then you're teaching stepwise motion. So then here, and then, okay, so once you've got this, you're first teaching skips and leaps. Here's a skip, this is a leap. Here's a skip, this is a leap. And then you're teaching stepwise motion. So then you can, so let's jump to notation real quickly, because we could literally be here all day. I wish we could be. Sorry, you were going to say
So,
something, I think, and I
I
cut
was
you
gonna
off.
say, like, I always like connecting those things to like the students. You're gonna have some girls in your class that are dancers.
Yeah.
You're like jeté, non-jeté, leap, or like skip.
You were a dancer?
I did a little bit of color guard, so
Oh, yes.
Like,
I could see you be a dancer, though.
Try.
Okay, so let's talk notation, because that is going to be what everyone's like, for how long are we talking? Like 45 minutes. Oh,
This is
over an
what-
hour.
This is what they came here for. That's
Yes.
gonna give them everything they want.
Yes, and didn't want to. So notation, we've already talked about note heads being the most important thing. It is an unfilled or a filled note. Have them practice putting it on there, having them practice with a staff. If you're a fan of music theory, well, no, you'll be using single staff, so it doesn't matter. But with singers especially, so this is going to be, I think, one of your biggest mind things to think about when you begin to hand them out notation is I would begin to hand them out notation just like you do in band, like just like a single part, instead of giving them out in whole octavo, because don't do that until they understand the staff.
Right.
And then once they're ready, you've got to teach them systems. That's going to be your biggest
Right.
thing to teach about. And I didn't realize, and Stuart Chapman Hill has a great video about it, and I'm working on one too, that you want to be able to say, look at a piece of paper in octavo and say, how many systems are there on there? 1 and 2, or 1, 2, and 3. Because that will throw them so much. And then numbering their measures. And that's a great assessment. I use numbered measures. Have you numbered your measures in choir? You don't really do that in band because it's pretty easy.
Numbering measures?
Yeah,
As in like,
of your part.
oh, all the time.
Okay.
All the time. With the amount of times I have to be like, trombones, what was that note in measure 7 that
And
just
then they have
happened?
it.
And they're like, instead of trombone and percussionist will take a little extra time to
Bless their hearts.
to count.
Yes.
Other than like that girl in the trombone section that's like, I don't know what's taking him so long. I had this before you ever asked the question.
Right.
Like, band people, girls make awesome trombone players.
Ah.
I don't know what it is, but like all of my best trombone players have always been like women. I don't know if it's just the personality.
Yeah.
I always think the wand chooses the wizard. I think is
The one to choose the what is
the
that?
wand chooses the Harry Potter.
I've never seen Harry
We're gonna have to do this before I go to Utah.
Okay.
The Harry Potter fans out there, I'm talking to you. The wand chooses the wizard, and those girls that are like, I want to play trombone. Like they're on it. Those are gonna be your like women CEOs, women presidents. Like they know what they want and they are here to get it.
I'm here for that. Real quick, so if we're talking choral music, right, and here's your piano part, and hopefully you're not reading anything that looks like this. I just accidentally drew the bass clef before I did this. It's so fascinating because beginning kids, you'll say, you measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll do this. Some of them will.
Oh.
Yeah, they'll go through and they'll label each staff instead of each system.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever you're teaching choir kids, especially because he's teaching choir, I am so specific to if you are numbering a measure that you do it at the beginning and you do it small and you do it at the top.
Yeah.
Even if you're singing in a bass clef or a second treble clef, always number it at the top. And they go, what? I say, well, you don't know who's having the music after you.
Right.
So everyone numbers at the top and everyone's numbered at the beginning, because this whole numbering in the middle is dicey. So I am so specific about how you number your measures.
Keep it small at the top, because if you number it too big,
Right.
and you start getting that's like multi-line stuff, you're like, is that number below or above? I can't tell, because you wrote it and you filled in the entire space between the two systems.
Right.
Like, make sure you can read it after you write it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The amount of times like we tell students to write things down and then they can't read the thing they wrote down, you're like, this is not serving the purpose that I wanted it to
No.
at all.
So, jumping to note heads, and now we're going to put some of these things together. You have 2 note heads. The next thing you add on is a stem. And a stem, and I always can go up and on the right or down and on the left. So I'm like, my head is the note head, and I make them physically do this, because that's always the case.
Yeah.
And then I'm very specific in teaching the function of a stem, right? So generally, we all know the 5th line determines whether or not the stem goes up or down, and the stem always goes through the most amount of lines, and it goes through about 2.5 lines worth. But then it can have different functions, so we can have a note that looks like this, we can have notes that look like this, we can have notes that look like this, right? And then meaning. There's all different ways in which can mean, and so I'm just being really particular with teaching that. And I have some assessments and explanations on this I'm working on. I'll give you before you leave. But we take stems for granted so often.
We did.
Without teaching. So then the next thing you teach is a flag or a beam.
Right.
And again, being specific that this is the same thing as this. And a lot of times I will sometimes just teach flags before I teach beams, because beams throw them. And this is where being specific about note heads is really helpful, because how many note heads are here?
2.
How many note heads are here?
2.
Right, so you have 2 8th notes and 2 8th notes. But I don't know if you found whenever 8th notes or 16th notes are beamed together, they lose their mind.
Right. They're like, how do I do this?
Precisely.
It's too fast for them, or it's a lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
I always, I do like to start just 2 16th notes at a time, as opposed to like
4.
4.
Well,
But
I'm going
I've
to
seen ones
potentially
that do,
change
like,
that.
To do 4.
So now, let's go. Before I'd even, so I'll introduce, this is what the note is, this is what it looks like, this is how you draw it. I don't teach function yet. I just teach identification, because then I teach function by going back to what I did at the very beginning and saying, let's practice some dictation. So what's the first question when you ask when you're practicing dictation?
What's your meter?
What's your meter? So what meter do you want to do?
Simple.
Simple, okay. What's the next question?
What is grouping?
Groupings, right.
Yeah.
So what's your grouping? What do you want to do?
2.
Okay. And then last question?
Was how many measures?
Correct. How many measures do you want to do?
Let's do 2.
Okay. So then I set my paper up. 1, 2, bar line. 1, 2, double bar line. And sometimes I get a little extra and say, and number your measures. And now let's go through and let's do a dictation. So do one for me and I'll do it.
Da.
Will you count off for me so I know the tempo?
1, 2, ready, and da 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 da.
Good. And then you'll do it again, or I might be able to have it already.
Da 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 da.
Good. And I'm going to say be really picky in making sure that you connect those, because you went da 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 instead of da 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 da.
Gotcha.
All right. So then I have this, and now what I'm going to do. This is my dictation. Was this right? Ta ta ka dee me ta dee ta.
Yes.
Good. And I will have them check it by, I'll give it to them on a neutral, and then we sing it back on Takadimi. or I'll sing it back on Talking to Me, or I'll say, does someone have this and want to sing it for us on Talking to Me?
Gotcha.
And I always do this with them usually.
Yeah.
And I have an Elmo that I can show writing. You know, it's like the doc cam.
Oh, yeah.
Or if
My
you're,
school's buying me one.
it will change your life.
Excited.
I also love to take an iPad and hook it up to Apple TV and use Notability.
Okay, I am gonna have an iPad. I don't know about Apple TV, but I'll have some sort of projector.
I bet you can ask.
Probably rig one up.
And then what's really cool is you can do different colors in Notability,
Mm.
and you can automatically upload it to, you know, Google Drive or whatever.
Show me this before I leave today
Okay.
if you can, because I haven't worked with that app before.
Oh.
But I have asked for a class set of iPads.
Oh. Even better, they just flip it up and turn it around,
Yes.
and they can show you.
Yes. That'd be lovely.
Have them change it to a black screen, which they think is real cool. You can change the paper on it, and then have them use colors, and it shows better if you read it from a black screen than a
Noted.
white screen.
Noted.
So this is like one of my favorite things, and when I begin to teach notation, right? So you can do this. So now I've talked about I've talked about time signature at this point, okay? So time signatures are two numbers. They look like a fraction, and they tell us how we can translate this into standard notation. So I call this shorthand notation. Well, Carol calls it shorthand, and then I call it standard.
Gotcha.
Alright, so then, I know that my beat groupings are 2, and because I'm in simple, that's my top number. So then I need to determine what that bottom number tells me what note gets the beat in simple, or if I'm in compound, what note gets the beat division.
Yeah.
So,
I always told my middle schoolers, how many of what?
right,
That's a good, easy way
Yeah.
to think about it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So then, how many of what?
Quarter notes.
That's so boring, but okay.
Look, I'm teaching middle school.
No, but if you think you only need to teach things where the quarter note gets the beat, they lose their mind when they get anything
that's true,
else.
that's true.
And it's all the same rhythm.
Yeah.
We're just changing the function of it. Or not even the function, we're just changing like how it looks. So the more
Yeah.
scared you are of teaching them 2-2, the more scared they're gonna be.
True.
I a lot of times will I'll show you, so
So many like middle school banders, but I don't wanna. I'm like.
right? But if I can teach my singers how to read 2-2 that have never read music before and there's no absolute reason you can't. And I'm sorry, but a lot of band people think that their students are the bomb readers, and they're not. Anyhow, so then what I'm
They're
going.
really not, you guys.
They're not.
They're good at faking it, and we think they're good at it.
They have great ears. It's rote teaching.
Yeah.
They don't know. And I know this because I have band kids that come to my class
Yep.
to sing with me, and they're like, oh, this is it. I get it. So the first thing I do is I say, let's set your paper up. And it's just like a math problem, right? I'm going to simplify. So I'm going to set my paper up. If the quarter note gets the beat, this is what my paper looks like before I did dictation. So now I'm going to go through and compare. Beat, beat. I don't need to change. Beat, beat division. I need to change. So I'm going to draw, and you can do it all kinds of different ways. I like to step by step show it. And I'm going to say, here's my beat division. Here's my beat subdivision.
Mm.
Beat division, dividing one note head into 2. And a lot of times I'll say, or I can do it like this. Right? Because a lot of stuff we see like this, but not always.
Right.
And then this stays the same. So then I just bring it all down. And this more, like, the quicker they get with this, sometimes I'll just say, okay, we'll erase that
Yeah.
and do. Now here's what I also love to do at the same level, is I'll say, okay, what would it be if it were in 2-2? And then you can really see if they understand what the function is of beat divisions, right? And they'll mess up in this, and it's amazing. And again, you're teaching beaming
Mm-hmm.
and what it all,
Yeah.
and they can do this, especially if they're, have been taught music before, or if they're a bit brighter, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I can't express how important this is. So let's just do one really quickly in compound meter. And so I'm going to be super extra and say in compound meter we're going to do 12, let's do 12/4.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1 beat. And just for time's sake, I'm just going to do one measure. Alright, so here I can go back and review 12 beat divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many big beats? 4. And
Let's do, would that be 12/8?
now we're going to do 12/4.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait,
Oh,
I
I
did.
see. I'm just asking
Yeah.
because of the compound.
Right, well, but this is a compound meter. Generally, it could be. Your odds. So then, let's,
Okay.
right, so
Okay.
then, what's the big beat? Done it.
Northern Arizona University. I'm gonna be stopping through there on my way to Utah. I'm stopping through, staying with him. We're gonna go to the Grand Canyon for a day, and yeah. You're like that episode of Will and Grace when they get that like free photo shoot with the famous.
Oh my gosh. I haven't seen that one.
I did my night care skincare routine because I didn't take a shower.
I definitely didn't do mine. Okay.